There we go.
So, hello Sven.
Hello.
The first question actually goes that what actually got you into metal music at first? When do you recall hearing metal for the first time?
I'm not so sure if it counts as metal, but the first rock or whatever, heavy for when I was a kid, kind of stuff that I heard was, I believe hearing like Smells Like Teen Spirits from Nirvana when it came up on MTV back in the day. That's how I think a lot of people my generation discovered that kind of stuff. I guess one from Metallica was from that same time period, I want to say. Body Count was one of them, like that kind of stuff. But I very quickly went into Pantera, Carcass, Napalm Death, Deicide, Brutal Truth. So it kind of went from Alice in Chains and Nirvana to the dark side. Very, very quickly.
Okay, so what made you sort of want to form a band and what made you become a vocalist?
Well, there's just a certain intensity to this kind of music and release. Let's just say, like, there's a certain energy that always drew me to it, and I think, like, when I saw those bands and I heard those bands in my scene, in my local town when I was like 15. We already had a bunch of local bands, and often I would practice with them because there was a local band called Pentagon. Their singer had trouble writing lyrics and coming up with stuff, so I'd be helping those guys out. So I kind of got like tossed into the scene, so to speak, in that way. And doing it and being on stage and helping them out kind of made me be like, fuck this, I want to do my own thing. I want this for myself, instead of just helping out a guy, behind the scenes. And that's kind of how I started with that stuff. Yeah.
So was Aborted like your first own proper band, or did you have like a band before?
I mean, officially Aborted started in 95, but we didn't really have any music till I want to say 97 or 8.
Okay.
When we did our first demo. It was my first real band. I did like some grindcore noise projects and in the tool shed in the backyard, but nothing really serious.
So when you started doing like more extreme type of vocals, did you have some kind of like idols that you looked up to, and did you first sort of try to mimic them before you created your own vocal style? How did it happen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess my vocal influences have always kind of stayed the same throughout the years, and that would always have been Frank Mullen from Suffocation, Jeff Walker from Carcass, and Bo Summers from Ill-Disposed. Like, those three for me were like the ones that stood out the most. They all three of them had a very distinct sound. I want to say John Tardy as well. All very distinct, unique singers, because in the whole 90s death metal scene, just like now, I guess there's a lot of people that sound like other people, but I always felt like it's better to stand out. Maybe not everybody likes it, but you hear a voice and that's Frank Mullen, that's Jeff Walker, that's Bo, or John Tardy. Again, like you hear it and it's that guy.
So when you started like screaming, were you first like covering these artists' songs, or did you immediately like jump into writing your own stuff?
No. I mean, I think I started like everybody back then. There was no internet with vocal coaches teaching you how to not hurt yourself and what your diaphragm is and all this stuff. You kind of just got tossed into it. Like with any instrument back then, it was, you learn it by yourself. And for me, that was, screaming along to my favorite records. Be it not in the shower maybe, but in my bedroom, cranking fucking Deicide and Suffocation and all that shit really loud and screaming along and getting angry.
So did it take like long time to figure out the right technique for the screaming?
I would say it's an ever evolving thing where you just discover more and more your body, and you, at least if you you want to keep evolving, you want to keep getting better and knowing more things, you just keep trying things. But I would say the most important thing about technique, at least for me, is just figuring out what your body needs to be able to do what it needs to do. Make sure you rest enough, which
you haven't today.
Not during festivals. Never works. But you know, I mean, you have enough experience to sort of like circumvent that. But it wasn't until like warm-ups and all that stuff, and I had no idea about any of that until I want to say when the Zen of Screaming, for example, came out from Melissa Cross.
Okay.
Way back when. That was where I was introduced to warm-ups. Other than that, I just got on stage and, you know,
okay,
just fucking full force. And the first tours are eye-opening because you know, when you go from being the local band to a touring band, it's like maybe 1-2 shows, 3 shows,
yep,
in a row, and then you have to play every day, and you're like, holy shit, how the fuck am I gonna do this?
I was actually going to ask you, Nick, that what kind of memories do you have when it comes to the first European tours, and did you learn a lot about yourself, and were you losing the voice, or did you already have the stamina to sing?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say I lost it, but you could tell that it kind of fluctuated between being where it normally should be, and then kind of, it always fluctuates, you know, you have, it's something organic, you know, everything, there's so much things that can influence this fucking thing. There's exercises you can do, there's all sorts of things that I know now that you can do to keep it in shape better. But it was rough at first, but that's the cool thing about the metal community. Even back in the day, you learn from other people that are always on the road, and you know, you're like, you're not feeling well. You see, I think our first tour was with Vader. So I went to Peter, I'm like, how the hell do you do it? You know, how do you not worry or freak out or lose your voice? And he's like, for me, after 5 days it kind of gets a little less good, and then it kind of stays constant and comes back, so don't worry, just do your thing. And you know, even just having the reassurance from people not to freak out, because I think for singers, one of the worst things you can do is get in your head about it and freak out, and then it's doomed to, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So you already mentioned like about warm-ups. So how much have those changed from the early days to today? And do you nowadays always warm up before the show?
I always warm up, but it's different. I want to say at the beginning of a tour, you will warm up longer, and then as the days go by, basically you're ready in a minute. It's because your voice is already trained to do your set every day, so warming it up properly is much quicker.
Okay.
Whereas when you start a tour and you haven't done vocals, let's say for a month or two or whatever consistently, then you warm up. There's a whole bunch of exercises that I learned. Obviously, I'm not a stuck-up idiot, and I've been looking on YouTube, seeing the resources there are, because there's so much stuff available now that wasn't, you know, back in the day. And it's not because I've been doing something for a long time that I'm doing it the right way. So you're never too old or too stubborn to learn. So I learned from various channels some warm-up techniques, and I've also worked recently a little bit with David Benitez from the Extreme Vocal Institute.
Okay.
He's shown me some stretches, some things I can do when there's a lot of mucus, that kind of stuff. So
are there like some specific foods or drinks that you want to have before the show that you have felt that they help you, or on the opposite side that you don't take some certain drinks or food that they affect your vocal cords somehow negatively?
Well, anything that dehydrates you is bad. You need to be very hydrated. I mean, that's the best thing, honestly. You drink a lot of water or whatever. Yeah, a lot of caffeine's not good. I'm gonna hide the can of Red Bull right there. A lot of caffeine's not good, alcohol's not great. So, but again, I mean, I think it's a personal thing where what really affects me will not necessarily have the same impact on someone else.
Yeah.
So the best advice I can give is, you know, just figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Know your limits and where you should, you know, if I want to be okay tonight, this is my cutoff point and whatever I'm doing.
So obviously you've released a lot of albums with Aborted, but are there like some specific albums that you can sort of like pinpoint from the discography where you have felt that you've learned like a lot as a vocalist?
I think definitely the last 2 recordings that we've done. I've tried to expand a lot. I've always tried to mix different styles, but it was always a bit like let's say my spectrum was this, now it's this.
Yeah, more diverse.
Yeah, I did screams before, now I do 2-3 different kind of screams. The lows are still there. I do also 2-3 different kinds of lows compared to before, and just experiment. I mean, try out things. It maybe sounds like shit at first, but just keep working it.
So, what were your parents' reactions first when they heard that you joined a metal band and started a metal band and become a singer and screaming your lungs out?
They were so proud and happy.
Most likely not.
No. I mean, they used to hate it when I practiced at home when I was like 15 or whatever, and they never were too supportive, and they were always like, you're wasting your life and your time with doing this dumb bullshit. But now they see where I am and they're like,
he made it.
So, well, I mean, you know.
Now they are proud, most likely.
Yeah, they're proud, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now! Finally, after 30 years.
Yeah, after 30 years.
You did it. Last question. Any kind of advice that you would like to give to a young metal vocalist who is just about to start a journey? Anything that comes into your mind?
Don't force it. You know, there's a lot of knowledge out there. Just do your research. And while you're trying to do this kind of stuff, always keep in mind to sound like yourself. It's great to have inspiration. It's great to have people you look up to, but they already exist. So be you. You know, take from them, but make it you. I think that's the best thing I can say.
Thanks a lot for this.
No problem.